Hey friends, my name is Courtney. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're gonna be making my comforting beef stew. It's super delicious, really easy to make, and I'm gonna show you how to make this meal, let it set on the stove, simmer away, and then it's ready for dinner time. Let's get started. So we're going to start by making a dredge for our beef. I'm going to be using an all-purpose flour, and you can use whatever flour is safe for you. If you're gluten-free, you could use a 1-to-1 flour like Bob's Red Mill or King Arthur. I like both of those. Those are both great alternative gluten-free flour blends, or you can omit this completely and not dredge your meat. I find that it gives it a really great flavor, so I always opt to do something like this. Just anytime you can build upon flavor in something like this, I always do it, whether it comes to a stew, a pie, anything. Like, I always season as I go. So we're going to add to our flour, we're adding salt, pepper, and then if you guys are new here, I love granulated over powdered, so we're using granulated garlic and granulated onion. And the reason I use these is because I feel like it has a lot more flavor than powdered. Also, I feel like powdered would also mimic that flour texture, so I'm not going for that with this recipe. If I was doing maybe a taco seasoning mix and I wasn't going to be adding flour, I would be making it with powdered onion and powdered garlic, for example, something like that. Now for my beef stew, I'm going to be using a chuck roast. I highly recommend using a meat that's going to fall apart. You could also use something like London broil if it was on sale, but you have to remember that it's going to be a little bit drier. It doesn't have that marbleization and the fat that a chuck roast has. You could also use something like a brisket, but I find that chuck roast is the best for a beef stew. And I'm going to be cooking this in batches, and I prefer to use a scissor, and I'm just using a cutting board because I just don't want to get the goo all over my countertop, and that is just how I do it. I'm a little bit of a germaphobe. As you can see, I'm wearing gloves. So we're going to go ahead and cut this into manageable pieces. We want them to be bite size, so about like an inch cube is where we're going to go with these, and then that is perfect. If you can see, we have a little bit of fat in there. I feel like the scissors give me a lot more control, but you could also use a really sharp knife and cut it on a cutting board. Again, I feel like I can manage it better using a scissor, so that's my personal preference. And then I'm going to be cutting out any ligament weird pieces that I find, and then I will be dredging mostly the meat that has like the marbleization. But if I find any like silver skin or anything or big chunks of fat, I am going to cut that out. I make sure that, if my son gets a piece, he's not spitting out a big blob of fat like this. So that is what I will be discarding. Now, if you didn't want to be so hands-on with the meat and you wanted this prepared for you, something that you could easily just dump in or dredge really quickly and put into the pan, you could also buy beef stew chunks. Most meat departments will have this, and if they don't, I'm sure they will be glad to help you. I just lost a piece on the floor, and I don't have a dog. I am so sad about that. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and dredge this in our flour mixture, and then we're gonna place it right into our pan, and it is going to sizzle away. We're gonna cook it about 1 to 2 minutes on each side, more so the 2-minute mark. I'm looking for a nice browning on the bottom. I have some avocado oil in my pan. You could also use an olive oil, but I prefer to cook with avocado oil whenever I'm frying or anytime I'm using something with high heat. So as you can see, it's not as much oil as I should have had in this pan. So as you need to add oil, you can do that. I ended up adding a little bit more oil so they can really fry up and get that nice browning, that caramelization, the Maillard reaction. It's also important that you do not overcrowd the pan because we want to brown these. We do not want to steam these. If they're too close, they're going to more so steam and boil, and you're not going to get that beautiful brown crust. So now, if you remember, I told you I was going to use that fork. I'm using that fork, so my hands are dirty from the meat. The fork is dirty from the meat. So when I go to take this out, I'm going to be using a clean spatula or slotted spoon. And you want to do that because you want to make sure you're not getting like ground beef goo all over everything. But I knew that this was going to be a dirty fork, so I'm using that just to flip them. And I only cook it on one side and then the other side. I don't bother cooking it on the actual sides of it, just top and bottom. You're totally fine. You're going to get a bunch of flavor just by doing this. Now, if you wanted, you can mix them around and cook them even more, but again, I'm not going to fuss with that. I'm getting flavor, and I'm very glad about that. So this is our second batch, and I'm just making sure I shake off that extra flour. I had a little bit too much flour on the first batch. That's totally fine. And then we're going to go ahead and not overcrowd the pan and cook it on both sides. Once our beef is done, well, not done, once our beef is browned, I like to put it on a piece of paper towel lined plate so it could absorb all of the grease. Again, it's going to absorb some of those juices. So if you are okay with that grease, you can omit the paper towel, but this is nice and browned, and I'm going to set this aside and finish the last batch because we did this in 3 batches. I had about almost 3 pounds of meat, so it does take a little bit of time, but that is totally fine. Again, you can skip this part if you want. You don't have to flour it. You could just brown it, but again, we're building flavor. Now I'm going to dice a large onion and place that right into the pan that we just cooked the beef. I did not clean it. I did not wipe it out. It has all of those goody bits on the bottom that we're going to scrape up. I'm going to let that onion brown for a few minutes, a little bit until it's translucent, and then I'm going to add in the garlic and then cook that for another minute. So about 4 to 5 minutes total on the onion. And yes, a piece of garlic flew out. My oven is due for a cleaning, so I figured today was a cooking day. Then we're going to add in some balsamic vinegar. I'm going with 1/3 cup. You could also use red wine if you prefer, but we keep it alcohol free here. Be careful because it does get hot. We're also going to be using the remainder of our flour. So I used 1/2 cup in the dredge, and then I'm using 1/4 cup in our mixture here. This is going to help give us a nice thick gravy. Then I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of ketchup. Yes, ketchup. Now, if you didn't want to use ketchup, you could also use tomato paste, but I would use a little bit less tomato paste if you're using that. So if I'm using 3 tablespoons of ketchup, I'd probably go with 1.5 tablespoons of the tomato paste. Then we're going to go in with our liquids. I'm using some water and some bouillon cubes. You could also use just regular beef stock, but I don't have any on hand, so that's why I did use a Better Than Bouillon beef base. Then we're also adding in some thyme. I'm going to add in my carrots. Our carrots were kind of thin, so instead of using 4, I ended up using 5, but I probably should have used like 6 because they were super thin. And then I used a large russet potato, but you could also use new potatoes, which are like those little baby round potatoes. They work perfectly in this as well. Then we're going to add our beef that we had sitting on the side and a bay leaf. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and fix the bay leaf because it's sticking out and it has to be in there. So that's what I did. And then once it's boiling, you want to cover it, and then we're going to cook it on a low simmer for 2 hours. You could even go up to 3 hours. Once it's done, you're going to give it a mix. And I did mix it periodically here and there, and then remove that bay leaf at the end. I bought this Staub spoonula, whatever it is, and gosh, guys, I can't figure out how to use it. It doesn't grab food like my Onita beautiful spoon right here. And yes, I shouldn't be using stainless steel in here, but I make sure that I'm not hitting the pan and I serve it up without scratching. We're going to take a beautiful helping of mashed potatoes, make a little divot in there so we can really get some gravy and all of the goodies in there with the beef, the potatoes, and the carrots. Again, you could add other root vegetables, like if you wanted to add celery, parsnips, sweet potatoes. You can even add peas in here at the end. You can really add whatever you desire for a beef stew. Even some pearl onions instead of chopped onions. Have at it, make it your own. It is so delicious. I'm just getting a few nice pieces on here because I want to take a picture for you guys so you can really get a visual of how amazing this beef stew is. Oh, it is so delicious. Our beef stew is ready to enjoy, and I cannot wait to dig in. I'm going to cut this piece. It's literally falling apart. You can see how it's like kind of shredding. We've got some mashed potato, some carrot, and some beef on the fork. Love, love, love this dish. It is so delicious. And one thing I really love that you can actually freeze it too. It's so super tender, it falls apart in your mouth even. My beef stew is freezer friendly, but I will say you want to leave the potatoes out. So I would recommend just making 6 or 7 carrots instead of 4, freezing it after it's cooked. I like to do it in super cubes, and then when my kiddo is like craving beef stew, I could just pop out a super cube, put it into a stovetop pot, and then I have comforting beef stew to serve over mashed potatoes, or I could do it over pasta or rice. We love it over mashed potatoes, and then again, if you don't have those potatoes, it's over mashed potatoes. So it's super comforting, and you can have it ready whenever you want it. I'm gonna go enjoy the rest of this with my family. I hope you guys give this recipe a try, and I will see you guys soon. God bless, and thank you so much for watching.